Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Mark, this is Spiguyver Backpacking, and today we're coming to you with a whole new series. This is a Hammock How-To series. So let's get going. Thanks for joining me today so that we can talk about the basics of hammock camping. Now, there are a lot of different reasons that you may want to get into hammock camping, and that's going to kind of determine where you go with it, what type of equipment you buy, and who you look to get that information. This, hopefully, will be the one place that you need to come to get all that information and go out to figure out exactly what it is you need. So, to get started, there are a lot of different types of hammocks out there, but basically it comes down to really two different types, a gathered end hammock or a bridge hammock. So, those are the two basic types, and you've got to kind of figure out which one works best for you. And we will do a whole series, a whole video just on those two different types of hammocks and the variables that can go along with them so that you get a good idea of what it is you could get yourself into. But for today, we're going to talk about just the basics of hammock camping, the things you need to know to get started, to kind of get some of that ambiguity out of the way, and to really set you on the right path to making a good decision and an informed decision on what it is that you need to go out and have some fun. So let's get started with what I have here. So this is a gathered end netless hammock. Now there are a lot of them out on the market. So how do you know which one to go with? Well, for most people, you want to go with something that is 10 to 11 feet long. There are a lot of box stores out there that sell Eno brand or some of the other ones like Grand Trunk, and there's like Ciroc, Bare Butt, a bunch of them that you can find on Amazon relatively cheaply. Now, depending on what your goal is, if it's just to get out and hang, go out to the park, throw up a hammock and chill, maybe do a little bit of studying in it, that's going to be a great way for you to go. But if you are looking to get into backpacking or doing any serious camping with it, there are some other things that you really are going to need to consider, such as, do I need a bug net? Length of the hammock really makes it a lot more comfortable. And the reason is, you do not lay straight in a hammock, you lay diagonal. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So, the hammock body, this is laying straight. And you can see I'm like a banana. I'm curved just up and down. So the way that you really want to lay is you put your feet to one side, your head goes to the other side, and as you can see from below, it is a much flatter lay. And so it becomes more comfortable, and it's more like you're laying in a bed. I like a hammock that has either no net or removable bug net, so that when I get to camp, I can chill out sitting in it this way and just kind of relax and see what's going on around me. So, you've got to make those types of decisions, but wait for the hammock video where we'll really get into it. So this piece right here, this is called the Hammock Body. Now you can get these in lots of different fabrics, different materials, different weights of materials, single layer, double layer. So when you get out there and you start looking at, you go out to Dutch Wear Gear or Dream Hammock and you're looking at the options. There's going to be options for single layer, double layer, which fabric you want, and those choices can be very overwhelming. There's just so much going on and so many choices. So you have to decide, what are you using it for? So if you're just using it for camping, a heavier fabric is going to give you a little bit more support and be a little bit more rigid, whereas lighter fabric is going to make the overall weight of the hammock go down, but it also has more give to it. This is a 1.0 fabric, which is about the lightest fabric you can get out there. This is an 11-foot hammock, which gives you more room to spread out and get a little bit flatter when you lay diagonal. You can get them in, this one's about 58 inches wide. You can get them up to about 65 inches wide. The wider definitely is better for the taller people. Up above, there's this string. Now, right now it's kind of loose, but when I lay down, it actually tightens up pretty much. And you want it so that when you try and make a bend in it, you can go not quite to 90 degrees there. And that's really what you're looking for to get a good hang. Now this is called the Ridgeline, And this serves several purposes. Number one, it gives you a consistent hang each time if you position your hammock so that this is taut when you're laying in it. It gives a consistent hang so that you can get positioned in it and be comfortable every single night, night after night, and it's repeatable. Otherwise, you're kind of playing a guessing game with whether or not it's right. Another feature of this is you can hang stuff from it. So you can get a Ridgeline Organizer, hang that from it. So if you hear the term Ridgeline Organizer, it is a pocket, and we'll show that when we get into the hammock one, or into the one about storage of gear. So there's going to be several videos in this series, but that's what a Ridgeline Organizer would be. Additionally, if you were to start with something like this, netless, and then get an additional bug net later on, a lot of those bug nets are bottom opening, or they're called Franke style, because the guy that kind of created that whole thing, his trail name is Franke, so he gets the credit for that. But it's a bottom opening bug net. You climb in from the bottom. You can still sit and lounge in the hammock with that bug net. Your feet kind of hang out of the bottom of it, and you're kind of lounging here. But once you get in the bug net, you can cinch it closed, and it gets closed up to the bottom of your hammock, and all is good. But this Ridgeline will keep that up off of your head so that when you're laying in here, the bug net has something up above for some structural support. So getting a Ridgeline is important. Now, there is a little bit of a disparity between how long a Ridgeline should be. So if you get a hammock without a Ridgeline, you can add a Ridgeline to it. 83% is about what most people generally recognize as the length of a good Ridgeline. So for an 11-foot hammock, it's about anywhere from 110 to 108 inches is what the Ridgeline will be. And that seems to work out pretty good for most people. Now, some people like a shorter Ridgeline and some people like a slightly longer Ridgeline, and that is all personal preference. At the end of each hammock, there are continuous loops. So those continuous loops are made of Amsteel, and it is literally just a round circle of rope that goes through the sewn channel at the end and then is doubled back, lark's headed on itself to create attachment points at the ends of the hammock. So if you're looking and it says continuous loop or not, make sure you get continuous loops. The other piece that you're going to need, so you've got a hammock. You go out ahead and pick a hammock. Next, you're going to need suspension. So suspension is what attaches it to the tree. There are tons of different kinds out there. One of the things you want to make sure is that you don't use rope. You want to go with at least, the very minimum is a 1-inch webbing strap to go around the tree. Some places, such as Florida, are now starting to require in some of their state parks 2-inch straps. So make sure that you know the rules of where you'll be camping and where you'll be hanging out so that you don't get yourself in trouble or get kicked out or make it more trouble for other people. But absolutely never use ropes to tie these to the tree. It creates too big of a pressure point around the tree, cutting off the vascular system of the tree so that it can't get water up to and pulling down from leaves to feed itself. So you want to make sure that you're using something that spreads out the weight of the hammock, because it's not just, contrary to what you may believe, it's not just your weight in the hammock. It actually, because of the angles and the way that it's pulling, it's an exponential force on the tree, and so you want to make sure that you are taking care to preserve the trees and really leave no trace so that 100 people going out and camping don't ruin the trees in a specific area. You want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to preserve the area the way that you found it, to leave it that way for another person. So talking about the suspension, there are hundreds of different ways you could go. I mean, really, there are hundreds of different ways you could go, linking different pieces to create a suspension. There are simple, just a single webbing strap with a loop at the end, and then you can make knots onto your continuous loop to hold it. There are webbing systems that have just a carabiner that attach. I have done a video on suspension, but I'm going to do another more in-depth video that really covers suspension. Now, once the temperature gets below about 70 degrees, you really need some insulation in these things. Unlike when you were camping on the ground in a tent, there's not air circulating below you when you're on the ground. So all you have is conductive loss of heat. So you against the ground, you'll lose heat into the ground. But the ground doesn't get all that cold unless you're winter camping, and then you know the importance of a good pad with a good high R value. But when you're in a hammock, you've got air that circulates below you. And so now instead of it being the conductive heat loss, you've got convective heat loss. So the convection, the air flowing below you, will really suck the warmth out of you quickly. And so you're going to need something below you to keep you warm. There are different ways you can go about this. You can use a pad if you're coming from the tent camping world, or you're just trying to get into hammock camping and you already have a pad, you can use that. If you're, say, a backpacker that is in an area where there are trees, but some areas you're not going to be able to hang, you're not going to be able to find trees, you're going to be going through mountains where there's plenty of trees and then into a desert area where there aren't any trees, you may want to use a pad. And a pad you can situate inside of here and lay on top of it, or for those who have a double layer, or if you know that that's the way you're going to go and you want to go with a double layer, the pad goes in between the two layers so that it gets sandwiched in there and it stays put. And that will block the convective heat loss. Now, you do have to pay attention because pads usually are not wide enough. Once you get folded up in here, the sides of the hammock will actually come up around your shoulders, and you're going to find that you'll get cold on your shoulders. If you don't use those, or you don't want to use a pad, because they aren't absolutely the most comfortable thing, and a lot of people that use pads do experience a little bit of condensation below them, which isn't always comfortable. So the primary method that people use to stay warm while they're in their hammocks are quilts. So it's a combination of two quilts. Think of it as a sleeping bag kind of cut in half, but a foot box that stays on the hammock. So that, or on the sleeping bag. So that becomes the top quilt. So the foot box, you put your feet in, and then it comes up over you kind of like a blanket. For your underside, there's actually under quilts that attach to the bottom of the hammock. They connect up at the continuous loops and then hang down below. And then you cinch them up, get them snug up against you, and they keep you warm from the bottom. So a lot of people ask, well, why do I have to use those two pieces rather than just using my sleeping bag? So the important piece to remember here is that if you have your sleeping bag in here and you're laying on it, what keeps you warm in a sleeping bag or a quilt is loft. So the more loft, the warmer it'll be. And it's those dead air spaces that your body heats up that keeps a nice insulated layer around you. But if you're laying in your sleeping bag, you're compressing the insulation that is below you, essentially killing the entire rating of the bag underneath you. And so you're going to get what's called CBS. You'll hear people talk about CBS all the time. It's cold butt syndrome. It's when there's not enough insulation below you and your butt gets cold, because you will feel it. Believe me, a lot of people will argue the point, 70 degrees, oh, I can go out and I can hang and sleep at 70 degrees. I will tell you, and I've said this before, the coldest night I've ever had in a hammock was in June along the Appalachian Trail, and it was a 65-degree night, and I froze. It was just the most uncomfortable night I've had. Since then, I've invested in the right equipment, and I'm trying to pass that knowledge along to you guys so that you don't have the same unfortunate experiences that I had. So, that's how you stay warm in here. Now, what about protection from the weather? Right now, I don't know if you can hear it or not, but there is thunder rumbling all around me. There's been a few sprinkles since I got out here, but a good way to stay dry underneath here is a tarp. So you find another suspension system that hangs a tarp above you, and you can put that out. There are other ways. So like Hennessy Hammock has some kits that it's all included, it's all kind of put together for you, where you put up the hammock, it connects to the same suspension, and it's pretty easy. A lot of those have kind of minimal coverage, so you get into some really bad storms with some blowing winds, and it can create a situation where you might get yourself wet. A lot of people use them, a lot of people love them. Not saying it's a bad idea, but there are other ways out there. There are a lot of different companies that make tarps. Find the right tarp that works for you. There's different materials. There's sil nylon, sil poly, Cuban fiber. We will go through a whole series on tarps, because there are tarps with doors, there are tarps that are cat cut, there are tarps that are rectangles, there are tarps that are asymmetrical. Because you lay asymmetrically in the hammock, they're cut to provide a minimalist coverage, but enough to keep you dry in case of a rain. So these are all things we're going to go through in here. I hope you guys are getting something out of this. Keep coming back. We will talk more about all of this stuff, and we'll go into lots of detail on each of these components. Thanks, guys. I'll see you down the trail.